How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky kind of went viral. It got famous. Did a podcast on it afterwards. It got printed up in a book, and it's very incomplete. It's very high level, right? It's maybe like 10% of what you and I actually know to be true.
Here's the idea.
Your mic is dead.
Uh-oh. Okay, is that better? Okay. You said something there, which was you thought it was obvious.
Yeah.
And I did too. When I saw that, I was like, everybody in Silicon Valley knows this. Why is this getting like 120,000, whatever it was, right? But then I actually thought back to when we were coming out of, at least when I was coming out of academia, and profit was like supposed to be a function of sufficient malevolence.
Right.
That say if you're mean enough, you could make a high profit, right?
Capitalism exploitative, and if you have money, you took it from somebody, which is obviously false. Go look at the cavemen. We're not subdividing up the deer carcasses from prehistoric times, so obviously we create things.
No, I will say I think the East Coast has that model because it's actually more true for them.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, the older the industry, the more it's about dividing up the spoils and about using regulation and network effects and all that stuff to kind of keep what you have. And this is a common phenomenon you see in societies. You even see with individuals, which is after they've made it, then they become either extractive or they become defensive of the existing system. And so, for example, the current meme among the left, it's billionaires are evil. Well, yeah, some of them, maybe, right? Depends how you got it. I'm always amazed that the monarchy still exists in England. Well, that was extractive at a point. This is where I think defining wealth is important. People think of wealth as hoarded money, right? But really, wealth is a byproduct of knowledge. If you look at wealth, it's a combination of two things. David Deutsch has a great definition where he says, wealth is the ability to effect transformations. It's to transform things from one thing to another. So if I can turn electricity into cars, or if I can turn labor into oil, or whatever, can turn money into, another thing, if I can swap it, then that transformative ability is wealth. But now if you look at what allows us to transform one thing to another, some of it is capital stock with machinery, but most of it is know-how. The cavemen had access to all the same resources that we did. They just didn't know what to do with them. To them, uranium wasn't even a thing. Oil was just like a sticky substance that maybe you stumble across once in a while. So the vast, vast majority of wealth is actually knowledge, right? So most people who are knowledgeable, actually incredibly wealthy, they just choose not to use it, or maybe they do choose to use it down the road. And I think that's very encouraging, especially now with the internet. Knowledge is so readily accessible. Now, of course, the right kinds of knowledge, what I call specific knowledge in my tweet storm, is very important. Knowledge on the edge of what humanity knows and wants. And if you work hard enough at it, or if you're obsessed with it, you figure it out. That kind of knowledge can be monetized much more than certain knowledge, which is now common. For example, if ChatGPT can spit it back to you, you're not going to monetize it. Everybody else can get access to it too.
It's funny because AI really does disrupt the bidwit, but not the person who's like, just if you're doing something in the physical world, or if you're doing something genuinely innovative, then you're good.
Yeah, right? True creativity. Like people confuse creativity with, I'm painting or I'm writing books. Creativity is solving problems, and is solving problems in new ways that aren't just simple extrapolations or interpolations of existing ways. And that's something that still, I think, humans uniquely do that AI does not do. I think AI is a little overnamed, but it's natural language computing, and it's very effective.
Yeah.
But it's not solving new problems that we didn't know how to solve. But that said, most of our lives are spent in drudgery. They were spent in physical drudgery, and physical automation has gone a long ways to getting rid of that, dishwashers, washing machines, and all that, and cars. But now a lot of it is spent in intellectual drudgery, filling out forms, writing reports, essays, emails for things that are kind of obvious. So a lot of work is busy work, and the promise of natural language computing and artificial intelligence is to take that over from us and to leave us for true creativity, which is solving problems that we don't yet know how to solve. So that is where all the value is.
So specific knowledge is probably the hardest thing to get across in this whole tweet storm, and it's probably the thing that people get the most confused about. The thing is that we have this idea that everything can be taught. Everything can be taught in school. And it's not true that everything can be taught. In fact, the most interesting things cannot be taught, but everything can be learned. And very often that learning either comes from some innate characteristics in your DNA, or it could be through your childhood where you learn soft skills, which are very, very hard to teach later on in life, or it's something that is brand new, so nobody else knows how to do it either, or it's true on-the-job training because you're pattern matching into highly complex environments. building judgment in a specific domain. Classic example is investing, but it could be in anything. It could be in judgment in running a fleet of trucks. It could be judgment in weather forecasting. So specific knowledge is the knowledge that you care about. The first thing to notice about specific knowledge is that you can't be trained for it. If you can be trained for it, if you can go to a class and learn specific knowledge, then somebody else can be trained for it too. And then we can mass produce and mass train people. Heck, we can even program computers to do it. And eventually we can program robots to walk around doing it. So if that's the case, then you're extremely replaceable. And all we have to pay you is the minimum wage that we have to pay you to get you to do it, when there are lots of other takers who can be trained to do it. So really, your returns just devolve into your cost of training plus the return on investment on that training. So you really want to pick up specific knowledge. You need your schooling, you need your training to be able to capitalize on the best specific knowledge. But the part of it that you're going to get paid for is the specific knowledge. For example, someone who goes and gets a degree in psychology and then becomes a salesperson. Well, if they were already a formidable salesperson and had great salesmanship to begin with, then the psychology degree is leverage. It arms them and they do much better at sales. But if they were always an introvert, never very good at sales, and they're trying to use psychology to learn sales, they're just not going to get that great at it. Specific knowledge is found much more by pursuing your innate talents, your genuine curiosity, and your passion. It's not by going to school for whatever is the hottest job. It's not for going into whatever field investors say is the hottest. Very often, specific knowledge is at the edge of knowledge. It's also stuff that's just being figured out or is really hard to figure out. So if you're not 100% into it, somebody else who is 100% into it will outperform you. And they won't just outperform you by a little bit, they'll outperform you by a lot. Because now we're operating the domain of ideas, compound interest really applies and leverage really applies. So if you're operating with 1,000 times leverage and somebody is right 80% of the time and somebody else is right 90% of the time, the person who's right 90% of the time will literally get paid hundreds of times more by the market because of the leverage and because of the compounding factors and being correct. So you really want to make sure you're good at it. So your genuine curiosity is very important. So very often, it's not something you sit down and you reason about. It's more found by observation. You almost have to look back on your own life and see what you're actually good at. For example, I wanted to be a scientist, and that is where a lot of my moral hierarchy comes from. I view scientists at the top of the production chain for humanity. And the group of scientists who have made real breakthroughs and contributions have probably added more to human society, I think, than any single other class of human beings. Not to take away anything from art or politics or engineering or business, but without the science, we'd still be scrabbling in the dirt, fighting with sticks and trying to start fires. My whole value system was built around scientists, and I wanted to be a great scientist. But when I actually look back at what I was uniquely good at and what I ended up spending my time doing, it was more around making money, tinkering with technology, and selling people on things, explaining things, talking to people. So I have some sales skills, which is a form of specific knowledge that I have. I have some analytical skills around how to make money, and I have this ability to absorb data, obsess about it, and break it down. And that is a specific skill that I have. I also just love tinkering with technology. And all of this stuff feels like play to me, but it looks like work to others. So there are other people to whom these things would be hard. They say like, well, how do I get good at being pithy and selling ideas? Well, if you're not already good at it, or if you're not really into it, maybe it's not your thing. Focus on the thing that you are really into. This is ironic, but the first person to actually point out my real specific knowledge was my mother. And she did it as an aside, talking from the kitchen. And she said it when I was like 15 or 16 years old. I was telling a friend of mine that I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And she said, no, you're going to go into business. And I was like, what? My mom's telling me I'm going to be in business. I'm going to be an astrophysicist. Mom doesn't know what she's talking about. But mom knew exactly what she was talking about. She had already observed that every time we walked down the street, I would critique the local pizza parlor on why they were selling their slices a certain way with certain toppings and why their process of ordering was this way when it should have been that way. So she knew that I was just had more of a business curious mind. But then my obsession with science combined to create technology and technology businesses where I found myself. So very often, your specific knowledge is observed and often observed by other people who know you well and revealed in situations rather than something that you come up with. To the extent that specific knowledge is taught, it's on the job, it's through apprenticeships. And that's why the best businesses, the best careers are the apprenticeship careers, because those are things that society still has not figured out how to train and automate yet. The classic line here is that Warren Buffett went to Benjamin Graham when he got out of school, and Benjamin Graham was the author of The Intelligent Investor and sort of modernized or created value investing as a discipline. And Warren Buffett went to Benjamin Graham and offered to work for him for free. And Graham said, actually, you're overpriced. Free is overpriced. And Graham was absolutely right that when it comes to a very valuable apprenticeship, like the type that Graham was going to give Buffett, Buffett should have been paying him a lot of money. And that right there tells you that those are skills worth knowing.
Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more from Naval Ravikant, I highly recommend you checking out his book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, as well as the guide on short-form, which compiles all the key nuggets. I've been using short-form for the past 2 years, and it has boosted my learning with its vast library of over 1,000 book guides. They're not sponsoring this video, but there's an affiliate link in the video description and you can get a 5-day free trial and a 20% discount.